certain circumstances become stressful for some and not stressful for others because we all have a different type of tolerance, right? So when it comes to the stress that you're experiencing right now, somebody else can be then in the exact same circumstance. Y'all both working the same job. Y'all both dislike it, but you're stressed out. You're losing sleep, like you're losing your hair, you're losing your appetite. Your mood has changed, everything, because your tolerance is different than the person sitting next to you. Why?
Optimal health is not a privilege, it's a right. However, unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of health challenges today can be attributed to lifestyle. This includes our physical activity, the quality of our relationships, stress, purpose and fulfillment, and of course, our diet. But what if there was an alternative? What if we could prevent and combat these health challenges with lifestyle changes before pills and procedures? You are listening to the Plant Protocol podcast with yours truly, plant-based health and business coach, and now the forever voice in your head, Lisa A. Smith. It's time to come get this health.
For a long time, I thought my stress was a result of my circumstances. I blamed it on work, responsibilities, trying to do too much, trying to be too much for too many people. I blamed it on the business I created. For so long, I thought stress was circumstantial. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago what the source of my stress was, I would have given you a convincing argument about external circumstances. I mean, I'm smart, like many of you. And so my excuses and my explanations and my descriptions are very, very convincing. But over time, I had to confront something that was very uncomfortable, that has been uncomfortable for me, and I'm sure it's uncomfortable for a lot of you. And that is that the majority of my stress wasn't coming from my schedule. The majority of my stress was not coming from work. It wasn't coming from responsibilities. It wasn't coming from commitments that I had made to other people. The truth of the matter is that the majority of my stress was coming from self-betrayal. It was coming from self-betrayal, a habit that most of us have normalized, so much so that we don't even recognize it when we're doing it. And that habit has cost us so much peace. It has cost us so much peace. For a lot of us, it has cost us health. For a lot of us, it has cost us relationships. Self-betrayal is what happens when you know something needs to change and you keep tolerating it, right? Self-betrayal is what happens when you know you should speak up, but you stay silent and decide to mute yourself. Self-betrayal is what happens when you know what's right for you, but you choose comfort, approval, and avoidance instead. At the root of chronic stress is not the circumstance. It's not the fact that you're a caregiver. It's not the fact that you're a parent. It's not the fact that you have up-team responsibilities. It's not the fact that you work a 9 to 5 and another 9 to 5 and a part-time job and trying to start your business. That's not what's at the root of your chronic stress. What's at the root of your chronic stress is self-betrayal. It's every time we do that, every time we betray ourselves, something subtle happens. We create a gap. And we create a bigger and bigger gap between what we know and what we do. And the more we create that gap, the more we normalize self-betrayal. And that gap is one of the biggest sources of chronic stress in our lives. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this habit of self-betrayal that's at the root of stress and what we should be doing about it. Let me talk about relationships. You know, relationships, especially romantic ones, are nothing but moments of harmony and disharmony. When you're in a relationship, especially a romantic relationship, oftentimes we're simply cycling through moments or sometimes even seasons of harmony and disharmony. And everyone navigates them differently. Many years ago, my mom was married to my biological father. And they had a relationship that was arguably more disharmony than harmony. And my mom was constantly subject to different forms of abuse, right? Emotional abuse, physical abuse. And he wasn't a great husband, and they weren't married for very long. As a matter of fact, at the age of 2, when I was 2 years old, my mom left my dad, okay? And she sacrificed a lot to be a mother. She sacrificed a lot to be a wife. My mom stopped her college education. She ended up going back eventually and getting a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. But in order to be a wife and to be a mother, she stopped going to school. She didn't even get her driver's license till she was like in her 20s, like later in her 20s, right? And she decided to focus on being a wife and being a mom. And so she made quite a few sacrifices, she sacrificed things that she wanted for herself to show up for her family. But when I was 2 years old, my mom decided that the stress of this dysfunctional, unhealthy relationship, unhealthy marriage had become too much. And she decided to leave my father. And this wasn't a regular leave, right? My mom left my dad physically running down the street, right? It's a story that I've told before. I haven't told it a lot, but early last year, when me and my mom were talking about this, she gave me permission to tell this story. She gave me permission to kind of share because I was telling her, I think this could be really helpful for a lot of people to better understand where they are and the decisions they make. And so when she gave me permission to kind of talk about this and to tell these stories, I begin to mull it around in my mind and think about all the different lessons that we can pull from it. And I've told this story once before when I was teaching radical obedience, but today I want to tell it in the context of stress. So my dad was physically abusive to my mom. And as many of you probably know about domestic violence, it's never a one-time thing, right? It's an ongoing thing. And so after so many moments and seasons of disharmony between my mom and my dad, when I was 2 years old, I was at the daycare on this particular day. This is the day that my mom decided to leave my father. And when she left, she left in the midst of a fight, in the midst of an argument. And essentially, she ended up running out the house, running down the street, and she never went back. My mom left my dad. She went to go pick me up from the daycare and never went back. She left him, lived in a hotel for a while until she was able to get more stable. And she made a huge sacrifice in order to make sure I was safe. I can only imagine what would have happened if she had to decide to stay any longer than she did. But when I was 2 years old, she decided to leave. And stress oftentimes comes from exactly what happened with my mom, which is we reach a certain threshold. We reach the upward limits of our tolerance for something. And it is that at that point that we have to make a decision. And when we get to that tolerance, when we get to that threshold for things like abuse, for things like disharmony in relationships, it is then when we are faced with sometimes an ultimate decision. And so whether or not something stresses you out depends on your threshold. And that's what I'm going to break down for you guys today. It depends on your threshold for things like disharmony. Whether or not something stresses you out depends on your threshold for things like disappointment. Whether or not something stresses you out depends on your threshold for things like conflict. Whether or not something stresses you out depends on your threshold for things like feast or famine, right? Having little money, having lots of money. Whether or not something stresses you out depends on your threshold for breaking the rules. Depends on your threshold for chaos versus structure and organization. And as we're going through this today, and I'm teaching you that the root cause of chronic stress is not your circumstance, I want you to listen very closely and I want you to ask yourself, what's my threshold? And where have I compromised my own threshold? Where have I surpassed my upper limits for my tolerance for a certain thing? Because I can guarantee you that is at the root of your chronic stress. So let's start here with the difference between acute versus chronic stress. And before we go any further, make sure you have your emotional support team, because I'm going to be talking about entrepreneurship today. I'm going to be talking about relationships today. I'm going to be talking about health today. I'm going to use all three of those as an example of how they can become stressful. And if I come down your street, I want to make sure you're supported wherever you're listening or watching from today. So per usual, during Monday morning keynotes with yours truly, Coach Lisa A. Smith, make sure you have your emotional support beverage. Make sure you have your edge control. I don't know if it's warming up where you are in the world, but you might want to go put on some boots, because when I step on toes, it hurts a little bit. And I don't want y'all coming for me. And I don't want y'all to say y'all ain't been warmed. So make sure you have your emotional support team. Let's start talking about the difference between acute and chronic stress. And then I'm going to tell you why your chronic stress exists. Okay. Listen, first of all lives are going to come with some dose of stress. All of us are going to experience stress. And so what I'm not advocating for is a completely stress-free life. Matter of fact, that's not even healthy, right? Just like inflammation, like we know inflammation is not good, but did you know that inflammation has a use and that it is also not good to never have inflammation, right? Inflammation is a signal and it tells us where to take our attention in our body. So stress is the same way. Stress is a signal and it tells us where to take our attention. And so what I'm not doing is saying that we should always be stress-free. That's not even realistic. However, when I teach stress, I want to make sure you guys understand that what I'm advocating for is the elimination of chronic stress, whereas acute stress is a normal part of life. So one example that I used almost all of 2025 was me writing my book. Now it's out of my hands now and the editor has it. So I'm stress-free when it comes to my book. But I'm currently writing a book about radical obedience. And for the past couple of years that I've been writing this book, for me, it has been a form of acute stress, right? Because first of all, my natural pace in life is really fast. So I tend to make decisions fast. I tend to get things done fast. When it's time to accomplish something, I execute fast. And so for the book to take longer than I ideally want it, y'all know we all want stuff overnight. We want microwave books. We want microwave businesses. We want microwave relationships. And sometimes stuff got to cook. You know what I'm saying? And so I knew I was not going to be one of them authors who clearly put out a book because they wanted to be an author. Not doing it. Shallow, no depth, not well thought out, not researched. I'm not doing that. And so because I've been trying to write a book that has depth, right, and is a manuscript that people will want to read over and over again, it's taken longer than usual, right? And that's not good for me because I like to move quickly and I like to check things off. But as a result, we're producing something that I believe will resonate with a lot of you guys and will be a staple on your bookshelf. But also because it's not my normal pace to move that slowly, because you got to write it, then you got to read it, then you got to revise it, and then your mindset change, and then you grow and develop, and you got to do some more revisions. It's a whole process that's honestly painstaking. And that has been a form of acute stress for me. Acute stress is good stress. I'm writing a book. It's a little stressful, but it's good stress. That's the type of stress we should all aspire to, right? We should aspire to the type of stress that pushes us, that challenges us. But most importantly, the two most important things about healthy stress is that number one, it's time bound. So it is very clear that I'm not going to be writing these books for the next 10 years, right? I'm just not that type of person to have a assignment sitting on my shelf that long, right? And so I'm not going to be writing that book for that long. So it's time bound. Matter of fact, I have set deadlines for myself. I have set deadlines for my editor. I have set deadlines for the team. I'm like, Kiwi, we're going to do a book pre-release. We got to have a deadline for some of this stuff, right? So healthy stress is time bound, okay? But healthy stress is also ideally purposeful. That means it is linked to something meaningful. So the book obviously is linked to something meaningful. Now, you can also have acute stress that's not necessarily super meaningful and purposeful, but it is time bound. That looks like something going wrong with your car or a repair around the house, right? Or a loss or some unexpected event happens to somebody close to you and, you got to be there for them and you got to rearrange your schedule for that. That's acute stress. Maybe you're planning a wedding or you're planning a project or you're planning a launch of a business or a launch of a product, right? That is acute stress. It's probably busy. It's a lot of decisions to make. Maybe it's costing you a lot of resources. That's healthy stress. So I'm not here to teach you how to be stress-free. I want to be clear about that. I'm here to teach you how to eliminate chronic stress. Now, while acute stress is healthy, ideally time-bound, ideally purposeful and meaningful, it pushes you out of your comfort zone. It helps you to grow. Chronic stress is just the opposite. Chronic stress, the type of stress that we're going to be talking about today, is not time bound. That means you have something in your life that's causing you pressure, overwhelm, taking up a lot of mental real estate, and you have no idea how to get out of it. You have no idea what to do. You think about it constantly. It's eroding your quality of life, and you have no idea how to get out of this circumstance, how to get out of the situation. And more importantly, you can't see an end in sight. You're like, I'm a caregiver, I'm a parent, I'm working this 9 to 5 and it's got to pay the bills. I don't see a way out, but I hate it here. I don't see a way out anytime soon, but I hate it here. Like, I need this to change because maybe I've been sacrificing my health. I've been sacrificing myself. I've been sacrificing my well-being, and it's causing a lot of disruption in my mental health. It's causing disruption in my physical health. It's causing disruption in my quality of life. It's causing disruption in the quality of my relationships. That type of stress kills. Chronic stress kills. Chronic stress can take 3 to 5 years off of your life. That is the type of stress I am talking about today. So that you won't come on here talking about, no, but it's impossible to be stress-free. I know that. Acute stress, normal. Chronic stress kills. And many of us are living with chronic stress, but that used to be acute stress, but graduated to chronic. Okay? All chronic stress starts off as acute. But when we don't take the necessary steps that I'm about to teach you right now, it graduates to chronic. So I want to break this down for you guys because stress is a real thing that a lot of us deal with. And as we navigate life, I want you guys to be able to discern whether or not this is healthy or this is unhealthy form of stress. Okay? Here's what I need you to know. And this is the biggest takeaway, is that at the root of chronic stress is self-betrayal. But what type of self-betrayal? Self-betrayal means, in this instance, when it comes to stress, it means you have surpassed or you have allowed your threshold or your tolerance for something to go on far too long. You have surpassed your tolerance for a certain thing. So you've been trying to function beyond your tolerance for fill in the blank. So the example that I gave earlier when I told the story about my mom, the relationship became stressful when she surpassed her tolerance for disharmony and conflict with my father. Does that make sense? Okay. Certain circumstances become stressful for some and not stressful for others because we all have a different type of tolerance, right? So when it comes to the stress that you're experiencing right now, somebody else can be then in the exact same circumstance. Y'all both working the same job. Y'all both dislike it, but you're stressed out. You're losing sleep, like you're losing your hair, you're losing your appetite. Your mood has changed, everything, because your tolerance is different than the person sitting next to you. So whether or not something graduates to chronic stress, the type of stress that kills you, depends on your tolerance for things like feast versus famine. Some people can tolerate going a long time without having money, like just barely enough to pay their bills, just barely enough to keep the lights on, just barely enough to keep gas in a car. Some people have a high tolerance for that. Like, I've heard people talk about it publicly, like, yeah, I know how to be broke, right? We've heard this, like, no, I don't went without for so long that I know how to be broke. I know how not to have money. Some people have a high tolerance for having low to no money. Other people have a low tolerance for it. So two people can have the same amount in a bank account and one is stressed and one is not. Why? Because stress doesn't depend on the circumstance. It depends on your tolerance. It depends on your threshold, right? Let's use another example. Some people have a high tolerance for uncertainty and unpredictability, while other people have a low tolerance for unpredictability. Meaning, and I'm giving you a perfect example, this is entrepreneurship, right? If you are one of those people who thrive on knowing what's about to happen, if you're one of those people who only feel safe when you feel like you can somewhat predict the future, if you're one of those people who only feel safe when you feel like when everything is familiar, then you probably have a low tolerance for uncertainty and unpredictability, which means as soon as something happens that it wasn't as planned, then you are stressed out. Whereas somebody else might have a high tolerance for constant change. Somebody else might have a high tolerance for unpredictability. And because of that, constantly changing circumstances does not stress them out like the person sitting next to them. Now, let's use one more example, and then I'm going to get into even more specific examples. Let's take harmony and disharmony. In relationships, right? Some people have a high tolerance for conflict. Some people can have people be mad at them and they don't lose sleep. Like, some people can know, like, So-and-so don't like me right now. I done upset them. So-and-so don't like me right now. I done hurt their feelings. This group of people is disappointed in me right now. I'm going to go take a nap, right? Some people have a very high tolerance for what one would label as conflict. Other people, soon as they believe somebody doesn't like them, somebody's mad at them, somebody's disappointed with them, somebody's upset with them, as soon as they feel like somebody might think they let them down, they're stressed out about it because they have a low tolerance for conflict or disharmony, right? So here's what I need you to know. You and 100 other people can be in the exact same circumstance. That doesn't mean you guys are all going to be stressed out. It depends on your tolerance. Stress becomes chronic and deadly when you have been trying to function beyond your tolerance for too long. So the stressful circumstance only becomes an unhealthy form of stress, also known as chronic stress, when you try to function beyond your tolerance for too long. That means you might can go 2 weeks with not having a whole lot of money, but a month or two, you losing your mind. Whereas somebody else be like, man, I could be broke living on beans and rice for a year. Like, I know how not to have money. I know I'm resourceful. I'm a survivalist. I know how to. Well, somebody else is like, I don't feel comfortable when my bank account gets below this. You see what I'm saying? So what am I saying? The reason the chronic stress is your fault is not because of what your tolerance is. It's because you've been trying to function beyond your tolerance for too long. Nobody's tolerance or threshold is right or wrong. You're not wrong if you prefer a certain amount in your bank account. You're not wrong if you can handle higher levels of conflict. You're not wrong if you can only handle lower levels of conflict. What I'm saying is you're wrong when you try and function beyond that tolerance level for too long, meaning you are not addressing, you are not recalibrating, right? You are not bringing the situation back down to baseline. And so now you stressed out. Your stress comes from self-betrayal. You know you get stressed out when you get this much money. You know you get stressed out as soon as you have some disharmony with somebody in your life, with your mom, with a kid, with your partner. And you keep trying to function beyond it. You keep not speaking up. You keep not fixing the situation. And because you keep trying to function beyond your threshold, you stressed out because you're betraying your own threshold. You're betraying yourself. Let's get into a few more detailed examples of this because I know some of you guys are in these specific circumstances and I want to make it make sense for you. Let's start off with health. You guys know I spent the first 10 years of my coaching career as a health coach. So of course I can talk to health all day long.
Hey, it's Coach Lisa. If you've been feeling overwhelmed or stretched thin or like you know what to do, but you just haven't had the capacity to get it done, this is for you. We recently released our newest coaching program and it's called the Gold Handle Club. And this is the Imperfect Founders Edition. It's designed to help you eliminate chronic stress one intentional moment at a time. And it's designed, most importantly, to feel easy as opposed to a high pressure program. This isn't another course that you have to keep up with. It's a simple daily ritual paired with real coaching and community support designed to fit into your life and not overwhelm it. Here's how it works. The Gold Handle arrives at your door, and every morning for about 5 to 10 minutes, you sit still in silence. You scan the QR code, and every single day, new content unlocks a daily practice built around our signature HER method for eliminating chronic stress. Not managing it, but eliminating it. And because this is our Imperfect Founders Edition, we're doing something super special. You're getting your Gold Handle on us. All you'll cover is shipping. Plus, your first 30 days inside of the club and community are completely complimentary so that you can actually feel the difference before making any commitment. So if you're ready to stop pushing off those major decisions that need to be made, those uncomfortable conversations that need to be had, those mindset shifts and that healing that needs to happen now, this is your opportunity to get coached through that without feeling like there's another big appointment on your calendar. This is designed to fit into your quiet time to yourself every morning. So click the link in the show notes, join us inside of the Gold Handle Club, Take advantage of the Imperfect Founders special offer, and I cannot wait to coach you to optimal health and radical obedience. Now back to the show.
Let me give you a few examples. I spent the majority of my coaching career as a health coach. So I've seen this like a ton of times. So here's what happens, okay? Your health journey, everyone's health journey, is nothing but amalgamation, a culmination of celebration and disappointment. Celebration and disappointment. Over and over again. That's what the health journey is. Like if you're on a weight loss journey, if you've been diagnosed with something, like if you have blood pressure issues, if you have cholesterol issues, if you have blood sugar issues, if you have an autoimmune condition, if you have aches and pains, if you have some type of gut issues, IBS, something like that, right? I need you to know that whatever you're working toward in your health is going to be nothing but a constant journey, ups and downs, peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows of celebration and disappointment over and over again. Like what we think is going to happen or what we want to happen as soon as we start eating right, as soon as we start exercising, as soon as we start drinking water, as soon as we start going to bed earlier, like as soon as we take fried foods out of our diet, get rid of the sugar, get rid of the dairy, get rid of all the inflammatory things, we expect all of our results to go up and to the right. Like we're like, it's nothing but up from here, baby. Like the weight about to come off, my blood pressure about to stabilize, my cholesterol gonna be good, my gut going away, the definition in my arms coming back, the mental clarity coming back, the brain fog is gonna lift. Like we expect that when we start a health journey, baby, I'm doing everything right, so my body should do everything right. I'm doing everything right, so my blood work should reflect everything right, right? And we think it's gonna be up and to the right. And what happens inevitably is that's not what happens. If we get disappointed, some weeks we step on the scale, it ain't moved. Some weeks we step on the scale, it went in the wrong direction. Some months we go to the doctor and our blood work says ain't nothing changed. Sometimes we go and get our blood work and we're like, it's slightly worse. Now we think we doing all the right things, right? And what happens is because we don't understand that the health journey is not always up and to the right, and sometimes it is ebbs and flows, and it is a series of celebration and disappointment, we get stressed out because our threshold, our tolerance for disappointment is low. Your health journey might be causing you stress because your tolerance for disappointment is low. We have students who take our plant-based coaching program. We have students who take our 30-day vegan challenge and they go to the doctor after a month or after several months after giving what they consider to be their best effort, only to find out their numbers still aren't optimal. And that stresses some of them out. Why? Because those individuals have a low tolerance for disappointment. Now you have other people who they get on the scale and that ain't moved, or they go get the blood work and that hasn't changed as much as they want. And they don't break a sweat. They like, you ain't gonna conquer me. Keep going, let's get it, right? Those individuals have a high tolerance for disappointment. So stress is not a result of your circumstance. Somebody else got on the scale today too and it went in the wrong direction. That doesn't mean they're stressed out too. It is based on your threshold. It is based on your threshold. Let me give you another example. Long-term relationships. Romantic, whether it's a relationship like, just unmarried or married, right? Relationships are often nothing but a series or sometimes seasons of harmony and disharmony, harmony and disharmony. Your relationship might be stressing you out if you have a low tolerance for disharmony. Your relationship might be stressing you out if you have a low tolerance for conflict. Conflict is not always a bad thing. Disharmony is not always a bad thing. As a matter of fact, most relationships grow the most in moments of disharmony. Sometimes some of the best things that happens for the relationship happens in moments of disharmony. But if you have a low tolerance for conflict, if you have a low tolerance for disharmony, your relationship might be your number one stressor right now. Let me give you one more example, and then I'm going to briefly tell you how to fix this, okay? Hold on to your hats, business owners. Hold on to your hat, current and aspiring entrepreneurs, okay? I have been in business for myself since 2015. I have made my gift of speaking, teaching, coaching, and shenanigans, responsible for paying my bills since 2015. My gift and my assignment and my business is responsible for keeping my lights on. Okay. That needed to be said because entrepreneurship, for those of you who do not know or who have not been in it long enough to know yet, entrepreneurship is nothing but seasons of feast and famine. Feast and famine. See, unlike a 9 to 5, in a 9 to 5, you often have steady salary, steady pay, consistent, predictable. Like you can plan weeks and months in advance, oftentimes with a 9 to 5. Now, I get there's all type of varied ways of getting paid. I know some 9 to 5s, you're commission based, you're sales based, you're all of this project based. Okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the majority of people who can pretty much predict how much they can expect to take home at the end of a pay period. Okay. When people who have become accustomed to working a 9 to 5 try to transition over here into the world of entrepreneurship and business, many of them cannot survive. Not because they're not good at business or what they sell isn't a good product or service. It is because of their low tolerance for famine. Entrepreneurship, being in business for yourself, especially in the beginning, the first several years are nothing but cycles of feast and famine. Y'all, we have had months in business where we made 50K. We've had months in business where we made well over 100K month. That's unheard of to some people. Make $100,000 in a month. I don't even make that in a year. So you hear stories like that and it becomes very attractive. Like, well, let me throw my hat in the entrepreneurship ring. Let me tip my toe in the water. Let me see, because that sounds real appealing. That sounds real enticing. That sounds real attractive. Like, what? So for some people we've had 30K months, right? Some people like 30K in one month is crazy. 50K, 100K. People have $1 million days, $1 million months. This is real money that you can create for yourself. But what you need to understand about feast is that it also comes with months of famine. So you have months, we've had months where we've made well below 10K, right? We've had months in business where we've made way less than that, right? And so the thing that determines whether or not somebody can survive in entrepreneurship as a business owner for 10 plus years is their tolerance, their threshold for feast and famine. I'm telling you, so one of my favorite things to listen to is entrepreneurial origin stories. And so when I listen to some of these origin stories of some of the biggest businesses and brands that we've heard of, when they tell their stories of months, weeks, sometimes years of famine, it is so interesting because I know that particular person has something that the average person doesn't have. For somebody to be able to survive going that long with just barely making it sometimes, with barely making it to the end of the month, sometimes not making it to the end of the month and having to lay off people, having to let people go, having to put projects on the shelf that they can't afford to fund anymore. That's a special type of character. So what happens is people get into this game, into entrepreneurship, and they literally try for 1 year. It's so crazy. They literally try for a few months. They're like, I tried selling my offer. I tried to be a speaker. I tried to be an author. I tried to be a coach. I tried to make t-shirts. I tried to be an artist. And, after 3 months, they're fizzling out and they're looking for a plan B, a plan C. They're looking to get back in the marketplace, into the job market. And they should, because their threshold, their tolerance for famine is too low. And trying to be an entrepreneur is going to stress them out because they can't handle the pressure. They can't handle what it really takes to sell something month over month, to get people to buy from you month over month, and to do it enough times that it actually pays your bills where you don't have to work for somebody. Let's not glorify this. I hope I personally have never glorified it for you guys, because I need people to understand that it actually takes a high threshold, a high tolerance for famine in order to get to the feast. And that's partially why many of you guys have been following me for years. And I've been a business coach for years, and I've been teaching business for years. But this is partially why I often don't talk about how much we make in business, because I don't want to give people a false sense of like, everybody can do this. Like, I don't want to glorify it, right? Because you can make exceptional money. You can make really good money. But the part that matters more than that is you have to have tolerance. You have to have a high tolerance, a high threshold. And if you're somebody who's coming from the 9 to 5 space where you're like, my work ethic can vary from week to week and I can still take home pretty much the same amount at the end of 2 weeks, you're not going to survive in entrepreneurship. One of the characteristics that you have to have in entrepreneurship to survive is a high, strong work ethic. And most people, because they come from a 9 to 5, more predictable space, they are used to being able to vary greatly with their work ethic from week to week and month to month and still get a check. Business don't work like that. Like, my work ethic has to stay high consistently. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to do videos this week, then I'm going to slack off next week. I'm going to create content this week, then I'm going to slack off next week. I'm going to run my coaching program. I'm going to sell my offer. I'm going to make my t-shirts. I'm going to sell my cups. And then I'm tired. I don't feel like designing. I don't feel like answering questions. I don't feel like making decisions. I don't feel like customer service. Like, your work ethic sucks. You won't make it here. Like, you won't make it. And so you have to understand that entrepreneurship is nothing but a series of feast and famine. And if your threshold for famine is low, then you're probably going to be stressed out as a business owner, right? So let's talk about how to fix this. I gave you 3 examples on why chronic stress exists for us. It's not because we have a certain threshold that's different from somebody else. It's because we constantly try and function and survive and perform beyond our natural threshold, right? So I gave you an example in health. I gave you an example in relationships. I gave you an example in entrepreneurship. Now, let me tell you your 2 options for fixing it. Let me tell you your 2 options for correcting it before we get out of here today, okay? So if you find yourself, you're currently in a state of chronic stress, not acute stress, that's the healthy stress, but chronic stress, like it's really compromising your health, your quality of life, all the things, okay? And the root of your chronic stress, as we've talked about, is self-betrayal, right? You keep betraying your own personal threshold. You keep betraying your own personal tolerance level for something. There's 2 ways you can fix this, okay? The first way is that you can adjust your tolerance. So if you come into entrepreneurship and you want to really pursue this thing, like you want to go all out, like you really want to get a business to a level where it sustains you and your family financially, okay? You can adjust your tolerance, right? You can raise your tolerance for famine, okay? You can raise your tolerance for uncertainty. Some people don't survive in business because of all of the unpredictability, right? Whereas when you're working a 9 to 5, when you're working for somebody else who makes all the decisions, makes the rules, who has already proven that their product has product market fit, when you work for somebody else who've already done all the hard stuff and they're just hiring you to come on and help, then things are a little more predictable. But when you're working for yourself, there's way more uncertainty. So in business, you can raise your tolerance for uncertainty. You can raise your tolerance for unpredictability. You can raise your tolerance for famine. You can adjust your tolerance, right? In relationships, if you're sick of your stress coming from disharmony in relationships, you can adjust your tolerance for disharmony. You can adjust your tolerance for conflict, right? And adjusting your tolerance is not a light switch. It's not an overnight thing. So I'm going to tell you the second thing. The second thing is what helps you to adjust your tolerance. But one way to correct this self-betrayal is adjust your tolerance, right? Like if you only thrive when things are super organized, but it's hard for you to thrive and you get stressed out when things are a little more chaotic and all over the place, you can adjust your tolerance for that, right? You can adjust your tolerance so that you can deal with chaos a little longer, right? But Lisa, what helps me to adjust my tolerance? Well, that brings me to number 2. The second way that you can correct the self-betrayal that's been happening, that's causing you stress, is you can adjust your expectations, okay? So the easiest way to adjust your tolerance and your threshold is to adjust your expectations So let's go back to the entrepreneur example. You're trying to start a business. You've never done it before. The majority of your life, you worked a 9 to 5, or you worked in some type of way where somebody else is paying you and you can pretty much predict your income. Okay. But then you come into the business world and you like, I think I want to take a shot at this because I have a certain gift or something I want to offer the world. I haven't seen anyone quite do it like this or tell the story quite like this. And I really want to own this, right? And I want to be responsible for putting this into the marketplace. But because you've never been an entrepreneur, because you've never started a business, because you really have this idea in your mind that I'm going to create this offer, I'm going to create this product, I'm going to create this service, I'm going to put it out into the marketplace. And somebody has told you that if you build it, they will come. Somebody has told you if you build it, they will buy, right? And because you don't have a lot of business acumen, you just have your talent or your knowledge base or your mastery, but you don't have a lot of business acumen, you are sadly mistaken. So your expectations have told you that if I build it, people will buy from me. If I tell people about it, people will say yes. But then you get a business coach and you come into the Clarity Mastermind and I am your coach and I start resetting your expectations on what it truly takes for somebody to spend their money with you. Now you have to recalibrate your expectations. You thought that I was just going to go into the kitchen, bake the best cake, and everybody will line up around the corner. That's not how cake selling works. You can make the best cake, but the only way you're going to sell it is if people taste it, people like it, people tell other people about it, it's set at the right price that makes sense for the marketplace. And that only happens when you market it. That only happens with visibility. That only happens when you decide to come from behind the scenes and get in front of the scenes and tell people. You thought if I bake the best cake, the world is going to automatically know about it. You have to recalibrate your expectations on what it takes to get a sale, what it takes to get recurring sales. So 2 ways to eliminate chronic stress when the source of your stress is self-betrayal. 1, you can adjust your tolerance, or 2, you can adjust your expectations. The best way to adjust your expectations is that you receive wise counsel from someone who's already done it and they can tell you the truth on what to expect. Let me give you another example. Let's take health. Remember earlier I said a lot of times our health stresses us out because we have a low tolerance for disappointment. If you have a low tolerance for disappointment, but then you get a health coach who tells you, well, honestly, on average, when you go to the doctor to get your blood drawn and they tell you your A1C, the marker for type 2 diabetes, did you know that is a 3-month average based on the life cycle of your red blood cells? Oh, so now I know if I start my health journey in January and then I go to get my blood drawn in February, it's still drawing data from the stuff I ate 2 months before January. Now I got to adjust my what? Expectations. Why? Because I was making my expectations set on my personal desires, but they were never based on science, facts, data, all of that. And so you can either adjust your tolerance for disappointment and when it comes to your health, or you can adjust your expectations. And when you adjust your expectations, it has to be from wise counsel, from someone who has been there, done that, have intimate exposure to the problem you're trying to solve and can tell you what you should be expecting based on their past experience with that circumstance. Does that make sense, y'all? Do you guys understand how chronic stress is not about it's not because you got bad blood work back that you stressed about your health. It's not that you haven't made sales in the first 3 months that you stressed about business. It's either because your threshold for something is low or your expectations were never based on science, data, facts, the real world. They were just based on what you would have liked to see happen. So you can adjust your threshold or you can adjust your expectations. Does that make sense, everybody? Tell me that makes sense. Tell me we rocking and rolling. Tell me that's resonating, right? Because for so many of us, we are disappointed constantly. Like we thought the relationship was going to look one way, but we have we've never been married before, right? We have no point of reference. And for some of us, we've never seen a blissful marriage and we have no point of reference. And so we're just like, we're not supposed to have disharmony. And it's like, who told you that? And your threshold and tolerance for disharmony is so low that I done made a mistake getting married. I done made a mistake in this relationship. It's like, no, you need to either recalibrate your expectations or increase your threshold. Because again, I want to say this so everybody understands, there's nothing wrong with you. meaning it's okay if you have a low tolerance for conflict. It's okay if you have a low tolerance for famine. It's okay if you have a low tolerance for disappointment. It's okay if you have a low tolerance for chaos. It's okay if you have a low tolerance for uncertainty. The issue is you keep betraying that tolerance. Like when you feel yourself approaching that tolerance, that's when the adjustment needs to be made, and you keep passing by that invitation, right? You keep ignoring that invitation to make the adjustment. Like if you have a low tolerance for chaos, soon as you're approaching that point where things are getting too out of control, when there's not enough organization to make you feel comfortable, that's when an adjustment needs to be made. And that's where a lot of us are dropping the ball. And so it's in that moment when we're not speaking up, when we're not making decisions, when we're not advocating, that we feel the stress and we keep trying to survive past that threshold. And so no one's threshold and tolerance has to look like someone else's. That's not the invitation here. The invitation is to stop trying to function beyond your personal threshold. And that's what I want for all of you guys so that we can eliminate chronic stress. So it's not about the job. It's not about the relationship. It's not about the money. It's not about the disappointment. It's not about the health status that's causing you stress. It is trying to function beyond your threshold. And so drop your takeaways. What was for you? Did you better understand now why your stress is not about the circumstance, but about self-betrayal? I would love to hear what the biggest takeaways were. You guys know that's the fee for free around here, right? I come on every Monday, do a keynote at no charge to you, but I would like to know what the takeaway was for you. Joyce says, don't compare my tolerance level to others. That's it, right? Don't look at somebody else and be like, how can they do business, but I can't? They have a higher tolerance for famine. They have a higher tolerance for uncertainty and unpredictability. Some people can really thrive without knowing the next 5 steps. Others of you struggle if you can't see like I can thrive on like not knowing what's about to happen next. Like I can thrive with it. Some people, like we need so much predictability. We need so much certainty to feel safe, right? And other people don't need as much certainty, right? But that can be adjusted. Here's the thing. Whatever your tolerance is not right or wrong, as I mentioned, but I want you to know that it can be adjusted, right? Your tolerance can be adjusted. Like it's going to be scary at first, but because if you want to adjust your tolerance for uncertainty, for example, the way you do that, I'm not about to give y'all all the tea that I'm giving away in the lab tonight. Plus, we ain't got that much time. But the way you adjust your tolerance for uncertainty, for example, is through strengthening your faith muscle. The way you strengthen your faith muscle is by taking small risks that don't feel as consequential as the bigger risk, right? And so when you do that, when you take small risks that don't feel as consequential, meaning the consequences aren't as big as when you take the bigger risk, that's how your faith muscle starts to strengthen a little bit at a time. You keep surviving smaller risk taking. And the more you survive smaller risk taking, you begin to build up your tolerance for bigger risk taking, which means you're building up your tolerance for uncertainty, right? There is strategic ways to raise your tolerance for something. And so wherever you are today, it's not where you stay. Like you're not born with the amount of tolerance and the threshold that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And won't he do it? Praise God. So your tolerance can be adjusted. Your threshold can be adjusted, right? But it does take some work, like anything does. But where you are is not where you have to stay. And if you are constantly betraying your own tolerance and betraying your own threshold, just know that that's the cause of your stress. It is not the circumstance itself. And there's something you can do about it. Okay. Lachey said, my takeaway is know your limits and don't go above that. It will cause stress. Yes. Know your limits. Don't go above it unless the thing you're trying to do requires you to go above it. And then you got to adjust your tolerance. So if you know your tolerance for famine, but you want to be an entrepreneur, like not going above it could mean staying in your 9 to 5, or not going above it could mean raising it. Right? So that because you're like, I'm adamant, Lisa, I want a business. I want to be an entrepreneur, but my tolerance for famine is low. My tolerance for uncertainty is low. My tolerance for rejection is low. When I get so many people tell me no to a sale, my feelings hurt. I'm stressed out. I want to go bury my head in the sand. If your tolerance for rejection is low, you're going to be struggling in entrepreneurship. You know how many times you got to be told no to make $100,000 in a month? So your tolerance for rejection might need to be lifted. Your tolerance for famine might need to be lifted. Your tolerance for uncertainty might need to be lifted. And if you want a business, so you can either not go above your limits, but just work a 9 to 5. Or if you want the perks and the freedoms that comes with entrepreneurship, then you're going to have to raise your tolerance. That means you got to go out here and get told no until it don't hurt no more. Right? You know how many of y'all, I'm telling y'all about the lab, and how many of y'all not going to take it? I don't care. But I know the people who going to be with me this week is about to be blessed. Right? And so everything is up to you. Everything is up to you. Let's see. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step. Shout out to Martin Luther King Jr. Let's go. Deborah up in here with the quotes. That's it. But that's hard for a lot of people, Deborah, because a lot of us have been reared in systems that are meant to be predictable. Many of us have been reared in structures and systems like school, right? There's so much structure. There's so much predictability when you're coming up in school, and then you're raised to go get a 9 to 5, and you're taught like this is the order of operations. Like you graduate from high school, then you go to college, then you get a job, then you do this. And so we're raised in these systems where things are predictable. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then the next step is to do this. And so many people have, been in those systems. And so when we get out of that type of system and we get into a system where there's not as much predictability and nobody can guarantee you a certain thing, it's harder. Right? It's just harder. And so we have to understand that it's the threshold piece that makes a difference. Let me see what Tamika says. Tamika says, based on my tolerance level, entrepreneurship is probably not for me. Now, I will say this, Tamika, because this is a great comment. So let me just say this. Based on your tolerance level, entrepreneurship might not be for you, which is perfectly fine, as long as the assignment is not being compromised, right? So can the assignment, here's the question to ask yourself, Tamika. Can the assignment, whatever it is, still be completed and turned in without you being an entrepreneur? That's the question. Because sometimes the solution is not always to, well, I shouldn't do that because my tolerance is low. Sometimes the solution is what I mentioned, which is you got to raise your tolerance because the assignment requires you to be an entrepreneur. But if the assignment doesn't require you to be an entrepreneur, and if you could fulfill the assignment that God has for you without having your own business, by all means, run full speed ahead and do it that way. By all means. So when we're looking at the 2 solutions that I provided today, which is, Lisa, should I adjust my tolerance or should I adjust my expectations? The question that kind of sits in the middle of those 2 options is, what does the assignment require? Y'all know I'm big on radical obedience. So what does the assignment require? If the assignment requires you to do something that will compromise and run straight up against your own tolerance, now we got to look at resetting our expectations versus not starting a business, right? And so that's something that you have to decide on. What we don't want to do is be out here like, my threshold don't go that far. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But the assignment requires you do that, and you do this. Right. So just make sure that you are not moving into disobedience when you say that. Okay. Until next Monday, I'll be back here with another keynote. Until then, you guys take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, y'all.
You tuned in today because, like me, you refuse to let your good become the enemy of your great. You're not settling for good health when optimal is well within reach. If you're ready to go from good to great, visit lisaangelsmith.com to learn more about our plant-based health coaching program, Farm to Table, and our plant-based business accelerator and coaching certification. But before you go, if you enjoyed what you heard today, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast. Until next time, remember, radical obedience is still undefeated. Stay obedient.